Career and Technical Education, or CTE, has been around for many, many years, providing windows of opportunity for young people to learn the skilled trades. Jim Walmsley joins us to tell us about the state of CTE today on the Midwest Flourish. Greetings, I'm Rick Farrant, and I am the host of the Midwest Flourish. And today our guest is Jim Walmsley, who is the director of the Impact Institute in Kendallville. He's also the past president of the Indiana Association of Career and Technical Education Districts. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Rick. It's glad to be here.
I want to get into the broader topic of career and technical education. But first, why don't you let us know exactly what it is that the Impact Institute does, the region that it serves, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. So Impact Institute is what we would call a career center in the state of Indiana. So we provide 13 different career training programs to high school juniors and seniors in the northeast corner of the state. And so our service area is really the four northeast corner counties here in Indiana, so Noble, DeKalb, Steuben, LaGrange, and we serve the school corporations that exist in those counties.
Yeah, and you're actually one of 54 designated or recognized CTE districts in the state.
Yeah.
This may seem like a very elementary question, but I'm sure a lot of people would like to know what exactly is CTE, or Career and Technical Education?
Yeah, so as you just said, CTE is an acronym that stands for Career and Technical Education. When I would describe Career and Technical Education, I would say that it's school-based programming that's designed to help students learn a knowledge base and a hands-on skill set that translates to industry and trades, and the opportunity to go directly from a high school setting into employment, if that's what they would choose following their high school experience, or be better prepared for their next educational step. Whatever that step might be additional certification-based training, on-the-job training, could be apprenticeships, could be associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, and beyond.
Yeah, and like many years ago, and I'm dating myself here, and perhaps not dating you, but a lot of people would think, oh well, these are the old shop classes that that high schools used to offer.
Yeah, shop classes, vocational school,
right,
is what you would often hear people refer to it as well.
It has expanded beyond that, right? I mean, that was pretty narrowly focused, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think in those particular settings. But again, remember, we've been around for a really long time. Impact Institute, in its former name, started in 1969 as a cooperative where students would go from one school to another potentially to get programming. So these types of things have always existed. They've just kind of they've changed and expanded, and become maybe even a little bit more narrow in their focus in terms of programming at times.
Yeah. And CTE districts serve more than 250,000 people annually. I found that somewhere on the web. From a statewide perspective, what are some of the significant challenges that CTE districts and CTE educators are facing now? There's a lot of emphasis and focus, which is good. But I think some of the challenges are really just kind of navigating what the landscape is currently, what it has been, what it is, and what it's likely going to be. We have a new diploma, or new diploma requirements that are coming down the path that are going into effect for this current year's freshman class. There's a very heavy emphasis on work-based learning, getting students out of school and experiencing life in a different way and experiencing education in a different way. It could be youth-based apprenticeships and different things like that. And so then some of the challenges that come along with that is, how do you navigate it? Is there a best and right option? There's a lot of talk. A lot of times you hear the words work and learn. I'm not opposed to those two words, but I would tend to want to flip the words around and say it should be more learn and work, that students should have some knowledge, some set of skills, skills before they go into that work-based situation. And so there's just a lot of
Kind of some confusion as to which path we're really truly going.
Well,
down.
Some of those requirements, some of the state requirements, which seem to be constantly changing, I would say for most people are somewhat confusing at times, maybe even for the educators themselves. And so how does because CTE is something where a student is still going to high school, but they're spending part of their time in high school and part of their time at some other site, right, where they're learning the trades and skills. How much friction is there between the state requirements and then the CTE districts trying to carry out their programs, or is there a really tight, seamless synergy?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of a combination of the two in reality. For the most part, with it being school-based learning, school-based situations, I think we do have a pretty seamless flow in most situations. But now, again, we have some things that are coming in from the outside saying that, this heavy emphasis on work-based learning, that not just the kids that are involved in half-day career and technical education programming should be leaving the school for part or a good portion of their day, but every kid should be leaving the school for a part or a good portion of their day. And that just becomes it's not inherently bad, but it's not inherently good either. There are challenges there to try to place those students, and then you have to look at the side of it from a quality perspective as well. The term that gets thrown out a lot in the state of Indiana right now is high quality work-based learning. Well, what's the definition of high quality work-based learning, first of all, and then how does a singular school go about putting high quality into place? I think that's If it's not high quality, it turns into a glorified job shadow experience, which in and of itself, again, is not bad. But what really is the goal behind what it is that we're doing? I think from a leadership perspective, from a state leadership perspective, they want it to be learning, which is a good thing. But again, the practicality when the rubber meets the road in district by district around the state can become a little bit more challenging.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but haven't CTE programs in some fashion, depending on how you define it, practice work-based learning? I mean, hasn't that been sort of a hallmark of some of the CTE programs?
Absolutely. Yeah, it very much is. And like, from my own experience, and I think most CTE directors and colleagues of mine around the state would say similar, our programs are designed, I tell people all the time, roughly 30%, there's head knowledge, there's learning that has to be there. We're going to spend roughly 30% of our time in a classroom setting getting the head knowledge that our students need for the industries and for the career paths that they're looking at. And then about 70% of it's going to be hands-on. And that hands-on is very much workplace simulation. For us, not everybody does it this way, but for instance, our auto service shop is open to the public. So we're bringing in customer vehicles and working on customer vehicles for folks in our community. We have a few programs that do similar types of things. So that's very much workplace and work-based learning inside of the program itself, kind of embedded.
Yeah, and I do want to come back to that in the context of how many people know what you're doing. But we'll come back to that before we're through here. So, for many years, CTE and earning through CTE programs, short-term certifications, various other certifications. There's been a whole lot of focus on it. It was kind of change the narrative, right? That there are ostensibly two different kinds of paths. One is you can go to college. One is you can actually go right to work if you've gone through a recognized CTE program with industry-recognized certifications. And now we have colleges that are struggling with enrollment.
Right.
My question is, have we gone too far?
Yeah. It was former Governor Pence that talked about two Plan A's.
Right.
And to be real honest with you, I think he was right. to answer your question, I personally, I don't know that I have any factual information or data to prove what I'm going to say, but I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't think we've gone too far yet. But I do think we need to be conscientious of that path and kind of how we continue to walk down that path. I often say it, I mean it somewhat jokingly, but it's pretty serious as well. In our country, we're really good at going from one extreme to another, right? And so we work on trying to move the mentality from a college for all mentality to try and, reality is we want some level of equilibrium and balance in it. But we tend to pass equilibrium and balance and go to the other extreme and the other end of the spectrum. So I think we just have to be careful with that. There was a video a number of years ago that really kind of resonated with the work that I do and my colleagues around the state. It talked about the 1-to-7 ratio. It's not true in every industry, but if you think about it, the way the ratio would describe itself is for every one person in a business or industry that needs a professional level or higher degree, you probably need 2 people behind that with a bachelor's degree. And then you need 7 people behind them with some level of technical skill, training, and knowledge. And again, it's not true in every industry, but if you look at many industries, that tends to hold true. And so, we've been trying to send roughly 60 to 70% of our high school graduates into a 4-year college situation when in reality, we didn't really need to. But again, to your point, we have to try to figure out a way to get to some levels of equilibrium and balance and not be shifted too far one way or the other.
Yeah, and one of the messages, that was out is, you don't. There's the whole expense issue, right? And
sure.
We were sending out messages, still are,
yep,
saying, you can bypass the cost of college. You can go directly into work if you've had the proper training and the proper skills and the certifications, presumably, and you can get a really good paying job, right? Yeah. And that sounds really appetizing, right?
Sure.
I don't have to go for the 4 years or the 2 years, and I can do really, really well. What you're saying, I guess, is that we need all of them.
We do. We need it's every part, right? You can't. That's sometimes the hard part with education, right? Is you're trying to serve that whole spectrum, that broad spectrum of students and what it is that they need, and that's a challenge. But that's really, in all honesty, what we need.
I want to dispel a myth, possibly, but you can dispel it for me, which is I think there was a time, I talked about the shop classes, then we talk about CTE, and I think there's still probably a fair number of people that still think that if you do one of these trade things, these CTE things or something, you're kind of stupid, right? It's where, you've heard it, Jim. I'm just saying, right? And so
it's a stigma that's been there for a long time. It's a stigma
that this is where the stupid people who can't measure up in any other way go.
Yeah, that's the old school vocational thought process. When people would talk about vocational school, and I think when they still tend to mention the word vocational school, that's what they think of, is they think of the haves and the have-nots. And all the have-nots that couldn't cut it, couldn't make it in a college setting, you go over here. You're going to go to vocational school.
Correct.
And everybody else will stay over here in the mainstream. And then we kind of tend to forget about those people that are over in vocational school. But I give you an example. A very good high school friend of mine. I grew up just south of Fort Wayne here. Norwell High School is the school that I went to. At that point in time, Anthus Career Center was the option for any kids that wanted an experience outside of Norwell. One of my good friends decided to come up and get into their electrical program. He became a journeyman electrician and has worked for Kendall Electric for many, many years and has had a very, very successful career in something that started right here in Fort Wayne, just a few blocks away from where we're at right now. Never spent a nickel on college and has raised a family of 3 kids. One has gone into the trades. A couple others are in the university setting. So it truly works. It can truly work very well as long as we're open to the idea of kids being able to make those choices and decisions based off of what they like and what they do well.
Yeah, and I think that's been one of the focuses too, is do what you like or do what you love.
Yeah.
That would be something that you...
I would aspire to that. I used to always talk about passion. If you could figure out what your passion is, and if you can turn your passion into a career, man, that's the best of both worlds, right? You don't work a day. You hear sometimes that comment, But I also have said too, there've been some people who have come out and said, well, I wouldn't use that. Passion's a dangerous thing to talk about. Yes and no. The reality is not everybody can make their passion a career, but we are still human beings that have passions. So I say in regard to that, like if you can't make your passion your career, you still have to be able to figure out a way to be able to pursue those things and pursue the things that you love and enjoy. So find a career that will allow you to do that.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about state funding.
Yeah.
So you get money from the state. You are reimbursed from this.
Schools. Yeah. Technically, sometimes I get caught up in technicality. I don't try to, but technically, the schools are the ones that receive those dollars. Then, from my perspective, we charge a tuition back to the schools. But it's that money.
Right.
Yes.
And there's kind of like a formula. I'm not quite sure exactly what the formula is, but some classes get more reimbursement than other classes get. And in some cases, though, they may not be tied to a really great industry need. And conversely, sometimes there is no remuneration for something that in a specific area is a need. And this may have changed since I last visited this situation, but I know there's an appeal process which you've gone through for a region that if you have a particular industry that doesn't fit into the sort of statewide rubric of what industry needs, you can make an appeal. I just wonder, and then when I talked about the industry needs, and I don't want to belabor this point, so I'm not going to mention what the industry is, but I think you know what it is, that if you have a hue and cry from students and parents that they want to study this particular thing, which may or may not have a great career future, you're going to offer it, right? And you're going to be reimbursed for it. So I guess my question is, do we need to revisit how we fund these course offerings?
Yeah. My answer for you to your question is probably not it's a two-sided answer, so I may not really answer your question. But the way I look at that and the way I think about that is, if we look at it specifically in only from a workforce development perspective, if me being part of the public education system, if I am supposed to be the workforce arm and just that and not take anything else into account, I would tend to make the argument that yes, we probably should relook at those things and rework how we invest those dollars. If we look at it from an educational side of things and we flip that coin over completely, totally, at that point I would say no. I don't think that we necessarily do. The reason that I say that is because there is value in every career and technical education program that we offer. Regardless of what might be sitting at the end of the rainbow, so to speak.
So I'm gonna save the industry that I'm not mentioning.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna.
But you can. But that gets into a whole nother conversation. But okay, so I'll use something arbitrary. If you have 300 kids or 300 parents in a particular district or a region like yours, there's a hue and cry to learn basket weaving. And the state says we'll reimburse for basket weaving. That just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me.
I would tend to agree with you there.
And yet, one of the reasons why it's being supported is because it's what people want, not necessarily what the industry needs are.
True. In that particular instance, yes, that would be true.
Okay. And we have examples of it.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, I think it depends on the perspective of which you're looking at it. And the other thing that I often talk about too is we don't just serve pieces and portions of an economy. We serve all pieces and portions of an economy. And there are folks around the state that I'm trying not to mention the industry that we're both, I think, referring to.
Oh, I'm sure we are.
We like to, well, except for a few of us, you and me included probably in this, we like to receive those services, and we like to know that people know what they're doing when they do that. But then we devalue it on the other side. And truthfully, there are some industries, the one that we're kind of dancing around, they tend to kind of devalue it a little bit themselves because there's a lot of cash that changes hands. And when you look at statewide median wages, that never gets accounted for. And so they shoot themselves in their own foot a little bit to that extent. But I think again, I would tend to go back to what are we really wanting from career and technical education in the state of Indiana? Is it solely and specifically workforce development, or is it partially education? I'll use a different example. I say this about our auto service technology program. It's a really good program. Students have the opportunity to earn ASE student level certifications. When you talk about industry certification, ASE is the body that you want certifications from in that particular area. We're going to have roughly 30 seniors in that program every year. Not all 30 are going to go into the industry and become a mechanic either at a dealership or a local shop. I'm going to say roughly 50%, maybe 60% of those kids are actually going to do that. Does that mean that program's not valuable? Absolutely not. They learn a lot about the working world and the expectations of the working world by having gone through that.
And possibly
program.
They earn some skills that are transferable to whatever it is they go into. So you're saying there's value in it whether they choose a career out of it or not.
That's the educator side, right?
Yeah.
The educator says we're here for the whole person. Right, and we're not just here to focus in on just that one little piece that we say we ultimately want in the end.
Right, on boosting the economy or making the economy healthier.
Exactly.
There are some employers that, short-term certifications, industry recognized, whatever the heck that means, industry recognized certifications. There's been a lot of talk about that over the years.
Sure.
Say in the last decade or two, and something to aspire to, and yet we have some employers. I don't know what the percentage is, but we have a fair number of employers who really don't care about certifications and would just as soon take somebody that they deem has potential and train them the way they want to train them that is specific to the needs of themselves.
Sure.
Are we putting too much emphasis on short-term certifications given that?
Again, I think that depends a little bit on the industry and the field. If I was going to use two of our programs as examples for that particular conversation, our welding program is an AWS certified program. Students walk out with AWS, American Welding Society certifications. In that world, those are very recognizable and in nearly every case needed. And desired by the employers that take our students.
I will say, I agree with you, but I will say at one time I knew of one employer who had welding and didn't really care about that certification.
You're gonna have that sometimes, for sure. Our precision machining program, we have students working towards what are called NIMS certifications. It's a metalworking society here in the States. Most of the places around us don't care about NIMS, but a good friend of ours, Gary Gatman, once said to me that a certification, an industry certification at minimum, goes towards proving and providing evidence of what we say a student knows and what they can do. So that comment from Gary a number of years ago kind of changed my thought process on certifications. We don't certify for certification's sake, although the state, we have those lists that are out there that's a target. That's one of the things that we're shooting for. But the reality is I tend to look at it more from the perspective of a validation of what that student knows and what they can do and how that translates into our environment.
Is that similar to people saying that a college degree, because frankly there are a ton of people who get a degree from college, and number one, remember very little about what they learned in college, but number two, they never really use that degree. Yeah. Is that kind of?
I suppose you could create that analogy. I think that's a pretty good analogy there.
Right. I mean, you can have somebody who gets an English degree, and then they wind up working as a CFO for a company, right. And you're thinking like, English, finance. Yeah. How does this?
The degree shows that you have the ability to set goals, pursue things that are bigger, maybe bigger than yourself a little bit, and prove that you can do something.
Yeah. How is CTE adapting? So technology is crazy, right? I mean, it changes every second. So how is CTE adapting to advances in, for instance, AI, automation, digital literacy? How is that being incorporated or addressed, or is it not?
Yeah, I think we're kind of towards the early stages of that. We're on the front end of those things and what that's ultimately going to look like. I know for us, I can only speak to what we've got going, in terms of impact. At Impact, I think it's beginning to really affect the way our instructors teach and prepare. They're using AI in ways to help themselves and also to help their students connect with them, engage with them in different ways, take care of tasks that might have been time intensive and cumbersome previously.
And some of these things are actually, I always like to say they're taking jobs. But there are also other jobs that can be created out of it, and that's sort of where I was going with this.
Understand.
I mean, will CTE advance to the point where it will take into account that maybe some of the jobs or that we're training people for, we kind of change that a little bit because we know that there are going to be other needs.
Yeah, I think again I would reference like our precision machining program as one where I think in reality I hadn't really probably thought of it like this, but we kind of been ahead of that for some time now, because we often say like there's a lot of machining in our region, that. A lot of employers are looking for machine operators. Well, machine operators in today's world, they don't have to have a real high set of skills. And I think it's becoming increasingly more important that they do, but they don't have to have a super high set. And so I tell people all the time, I'm not trying to create the next generation of machine operators. You can go up to Chicago on a given year and go up to a show called FabTech where they fill massive convention centers, and you see what that next machine operator is. That next machine operator is a robot or cobot that has the ability to put the materials inside of that machine, hit the button, and walk away and do other things, just like a human being can do. So we have to be thinking higher level. We have to be preparing students for higher level. Programming, for instance, we have an Industry 4.0 program that really correlates technology, information into the manufacturing environment, those types of things. So I think we're going to continue to see as we see change in the marketplace and entry level types of positions being replaced by AI, we're going to have to continue to work to be above and in front of that.
Yeah, and in the couple minutes we have left, I want you to address this question. There is a sense that the CTE districts, the educators, everybody involved in it, have not necessarily done a great job of promoting CTE in the general sense. Now what I'm talking about is, I'm just saying not necessarily to the students and parents, but that may be the case, but also just to the the people of influence and the policymakers and that sort of thing. What is your sense of where CTE is in the state of Indiana as far as letting people know that there is this resource, this great resource that has not only been going on for years, but is also adapting to the changing climates in the industries and in the economy? What's your sense of that?
Yeah. First and foremost, I would just say a reminder that we never went away. There are some who feel like we disappeared somehow, and that this work somehow stopped. It never stopped. It's continued to move on. But I would say primarily leaders within our state, leaders within education, et cetera, have just kind of forgotten what was there. As we moved into that college for all mentality and have had that for decades, that became the overwhelming and the overriding thought process was, again, it was the haves and the have-nots. It was there just for them. It's not that way anymore. We're often told, my colleagues and I are often told, that we don't do a very good job of telling our own story. And so I'd say my general sense of where we're at is we're behind a little bit in terms of where we should be in really communicating, creating awareness, interacting with, and making sure that the folks in our particular districts and service areas know what it is that we have to offer and know what the opportunities are that exist for the young people in our communities.
From a very really quickly, sorry to rush you. What is your personal passion in promoting CTE? Yeah. Where does that come from?
I identify with CTE. I got into education late. I spent a bachelor's degree in business administration, spent 10 years in the business world before I decided to go back to school and get into education. So I identify with career and tech ed instructors because I took those 10 years worth of experience into the classroom with me. And so I love what I do. When I got into education, never imagined that I'd be doing what I'm doing right now. But I love what I do. But more importantly than that, I love what we do for kids. We provide them with opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise if we didn't exist and we didn't do what we do.
Well, I really appreciate your stopping by. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
It.
Take care, Jim.
Thanks.
That's a wrap on today's episode of the Midwest Flourish podcast. Want to dig deeper or get involved? Head to marketingthemidwest.com to explore how we can work together to empower your community to flourish. Let's keep the Midwest momentum going and shape the future of our region together.